2 weeks ago, you know, all I can say is our world tipped upside down. As a teacher myself, you know, they talked about the possibility of schools closing, but I don't think any of us thought it would happen as quickly as it did. And yeah, and obviously for me, finishing work, that was a big thing, and having to then work out how I was going to work at home. But also me and Tom found ourselves living together, which sounds silly because we're married, but you know, as he said, he spends a lot of his time away. He always has done since we've been together. It's always been our normal, and when we had kids we knew it would be that way. You know, he's been home like most weekends throughout, with periods of time where he's been away for longer, particularly when he was down in Plymouth. He couldn't come home every weekend, so usually every 2 or 3 weeks he'd be back. But anyway, so yes, that's been a bit of an adjustment, but big adjustment for the kids. You know, school's finished, nursery's finished, they're at home with us, and as much as they love us, I'm sure they all get a bit fed up of us, as we get a bit fed up of them sometimes. But yeah, it's just, everything's just got tipped upside down, and the social side of things has stopped. You know, for Georgia, she's not going to rainbows anymore, she's not going to swimming, she's not doing her tennis lessons, she's not going to birthday parties, she's not going to church. All these things that are part of our routine, and her life have stopped, as it has for everybody. Now, you know, everyone, as I say, is feeling this in different ways. We're very fortunate financially. We don't have any loss of income or anything, so you know, we are very, very fortunate. So that's great. But what I found was the other week, this was before the lockdown, Georgia and I went for a little walk. Oh, it's the day we did the video. That's the day we went to do the recording for the promotional video. And we went out and we just ended up sat by the pond that's in the video, and we were chatting about stuff. She was asking me questions like, when can I go back to school? Will I be able to see my friend? When can I see Nanny and Grandad, which is a big thing. And I know my mum and dad are probably watching maybe. I think my mum's probably just about finished work now. You know, I know they're missing the girls desperately. And it's hard, you know, these questions she was asking me, I didn't really know how to answer them, and because none of us know. It's just one of these things. We've just kind of got to get on with it and muddle through and hope that everything's going to work out, and just remember how fortunate we are that we are where we are. But yeah, she was obviously feeling quite helpless. We all were, I suppose, like we'd lost control and we couldn't fix it, and just didn't know how to answer the questions. Just really uncertain. And suddenly I kind of felt myself, I was answering her questions, as I do, because we have a lot of questions. And as I was answering them, I kind of just had this weird deja vu moment where I just thought, I feel just like how I felt back then. I felt the anxiety that I felt, because I definitely struggled with anxiety that year when Tom was ill. And well, say when he was, at least he still is, but what I mean is when it was all particularly new. I think some of that was a bit of a postnatal thing, but you know, so some of it a bit irrational, some of it certainly very rational. And anyway, I just felt that knot in my chest again, and I felt myself answering her questions and feeling very much like I did then, and giving the same kind of answers. You know, just talking about how, well, you know, rather than thinking about it as not seeing your friends, think about it as spending more time at home together, and we're slowing down and we're just having, you know, spending that more quality time together and doing the things that, you know, we're still doing things together, but it's just different things. We have to change the way we're doing. And it's so weird. Like I suddenly felt myself just talking, like quoting the book. It says in the book as well, things are just a bit different now. It doesn't mean I should be sad. Time together is more precious than ever. Slowing down is not really so bad. And that really is what we're all going through at the moment. It's what we're all living with. We're all having to stop. Things have changed. It will go back to normal at some point, I imagine, but it will, or maybe it'll be forever changed in some way. I'm not sure. I kind of hope so in a way. I hope that people are changing for the better. I hope we're making better choices, and that will continue. I hope we're appreciating things more. We're thinking about the stuff that we really need and the stuff that really doesn't matter. But yeah, this just really spoke out to me, and I found myself just talking to Georgia about the book as we were answering the questions, and I just thought, gosh, how similar a situation we're in right now. And actually this book suddenly, you know, it's been written about ME, but I saw how it was relevant to other chronic illnesses, invisible illnesses, disability. But actually suddenly this book's just for everyone. Every child right now can appreciate what's happening in this book, about how things are suddenly changing and how we're having to adapt and do things a bit differently. So yes, that's the first thing I wanted to say. And yeah, and this isolation that we find ourselves in, it's new, it's stifling, it's settled down a bit this week. Weirdly, I feel like I'm a bit more used to it. I feel like I appreciate a lot more what Tom has been through and still continues to go through, really, because he still isn't always able to do everything that he wants to do. You know, he can't always, certainly can't handle like big days out, or, you know, maybe like big loud nights out with friends, or, you know, just that isn't an option. So yeah, the isolation, everyone's feeling it at the moment. Some people might be natural introverts and they're quite happy about it. It might be a dream come true. I can think of a couple of people who probably feel like that. But for the large majority of people, you know, we're missing connection, we're missing other people, we're missing just, you know, being around others and our routine. You know, people like routine and they like just things to stay the same generally. We don't cope well with change. So yeah, and what I just really want to say is that Miranda Hart the other day did a brilliant video. I did post, I think I reposted it, or I posted a quote from it, in which she said, have I got it on here? I don't think I have. Basically on the quote, she talked about the chronic illness. Now she hasn't said out loud that she suffers with chronic illness, but she did say that this came from a very personal, from a very personal experience. So I would perhaps be inclined to think that she has got or has had ME. But as Tony said, you know, if she's had it and she's recovered, it could be that she still has to be very, very careful. But anyway, you know, but what she said was really, really fantastic, in that the people, any people who are in the chronic illness world, who are struggling with fatigue related illnesses, who are in long-term illnesses, particularly people with severe long-term chronic fatigue, you know, they do find themselves in a situation where they are isolated. And for Tom, he's mentioned, you know, his severe isolation was really or his serious isolation was probably for about 6 to 9 months, whereas for some people this is years. I know people who they're isolated often. Sometimes, you know, we have periods where they are feeling well enough to get out a little bit, perhaps, or just to just be housebound rather than bedbound. But actually, the majority of, not the majority, but a lot of people do find themselves isolated, and not just isolated in terms of like isolated in their house, but, you know, isolated in a room where they don't see much of their family. I know people who just can't bear to have their children around them because of the kind of the sensory overload of it all, and just not being able to, not having the energy to do it. But, you know, there's people as well who are isolated in terms of like socially, you know, friends drop off. Some people get it, some people don't. Now that's no slight to anyone who doesn't, because it's a hard thing to understand unless you've really lived with it. We've been very fortunate. A lot of our friends have either come and spent time with us and seen it firsthand, like extended time with us, or they've researched it themselves. You know, there are a few people who haven't got it and perhaps still don't, but that's fine. You know, we would never be cross or upset about it, because I didn't get it before, Tom didn't get it before. You know, it's just, you know, it's just not you know, you can't cast judgment on people for that at all. You really, really can't. But what I'm trying to say is there's people out there who end up isolated socially. You know, friends just kind of stop calling, or they don't know what to say, or they kind of feel like their friends just aren't trying, where they don't really understand the root of it all. But also in terms of isolation, you know, things like careers and jobs, and just people being able to give something back to society, or to be part of society. I think that's a big thing. Miranda said about how every day with a chronic illness, every day there's a daily grief, a sense of disappointment, and always something to miss. I've been absolutely amazed. Let me turn my notes over. I've been amazed in the last 2-3 weeks how suddenly the world has just become so accessible and inclusive. So, you know, I'm able to work from home. I mean, I'm a teacher. I didn't think, you know, there's always bits to do at home, but it's not been so much just planning, but it's been communicating with parents, it's been communicating with the kids, it's been just finding things to send home, all kinds of things. And I know there's lots more stuff going on in other schools and in the background at my own school, but also things like the working from home, things like socializing at home. Like apps like Zoom and House Party have just become massive, and it's become a thing where people can like communicate with like 10 of their friends on one screen. And, you know, and perhaps that wasn't happening before. You know, it's just suddenly become so accessible. I know my own church, the doors were closed as soon as the lockdown happened. And for the last 2 Sundays, we've had a streamed church service, which has been fantastic. And all of a sudden, there's people at our church who are unable to go every week. They're unable to be a part of church. And suddenly they are part of church. They're able to you know, engage in it and to really just feel a part of that. And even they've even made space for people to have like that kind of time to meet afterwards, and had like Zoom chat rooms. And anyway, there's all kinds of things that have happened. So yeah, so it just kind of made me think that, you know, when it came to it, when the world got isolated, we've suddenly been able to do it. But for years, there's been people who have been wanting to work, but have been told that they can't because they can't do it. There's been people who've been wanting to take part in, I don't know, like groups, church, things like that, and they've been, perhaps it's just not, they've been told it's not possible, or perhaps it's just inaccessible. But we've proved now that it can be done, and I just really hope that that continues. Once this lockdown ends, I just hope that everybody will remember that it's not the end for everybody. Some people will continue in isolation in different, you know, different amounts for a long time, and just try and remember that. And yeah, and I just hope and pray that these opportunities will continue, and that people who I know who are chronically ill, who feel at the moment that they're not able to work, perhaps they feel that they could, or they could do more, but they just need it done in a more accessible way. You know, Tom he will be leaving the Navy quite soon. With COVID, we're not sure exactly when and what will happen, but you know, he's been very fortunate. They've tried to support him in his work, and he's on he's been doing a placement, and he's been able to work from home. He's been able to make amendments, adjustments, and things like that have allowed work to become an easier thing for him. Been able to access it in a way that perhaps he couldn't before. Now, he is very, very fortunate. We know that, but I just hope that society, businesses, companies, whatever, can provide that for people, because there's so many people, like I see online, like in the chronic illness community, there's so many creative people, there's so many talented people. There's people like ex-teachers, people who are on the ladder to be head teachers, who now know they can't, they can't do that anymore. However, like, just think what an amazing like wealth of skills and talents these people have, and what they could do. You know, people who before getting ill were professionals, sometimes even in the health sector. You know, what could these people do in a different role if you just allowed them to work in a different way? So yeah, so that's that. I also just want to say, for those families who have got a chronically ill parent, just as Tom said before, positivity has been a big thing for us, and just, I think, know that there is hope. Like Tony said, there are so many cases of people who do get better, but we don't always, especially online, you don't always hear of those, or you don't, it's like anything, we always sometimes can be focusing on the negatives, or can be quite overwhelmed by that. I know at one point I had to just stay away from the ME world online because it just filled me with dread. It was terrified every time I read it. But there are positive stories in there. So just share and talk, and just hope. Just know that there is hope, particularly for people who are quite new to the illness. I spoke with a guy on Instagram the other day he's in Austria. So hi if you're watching. He was just saying that his wife has actually written a story as well about what's happened to him, and he got ill about a year ago. And at the moment he is quite poorly with it. So, just know that there is hope. At one point, honestly, if you'd have told me that we would be where we were now, I wouldn't have believed you. And as I've said before, he's not recovered. He's not, I don't know. I mean, Tom would probably say he's not even 50% back to where he was, but he's back enough that he can now do things. I mean, he's got the children right now. They're only watching TV and things, but he's able to do that. A couple of years ago, that wouldn't have been an option at all. He couldn't have handled the children for that long, or and just kind of met their needs while they were doing that. So things are getting better, but he'll probably never be how he was, but he's making steps. So we've just got to focus on the hope.